Well, hello everyone. Good afternoon and welcome to Trolleheim with your host, Rabbi Anibal. I still have to figure out how to put my name there on screen. I'm using a new version of the software and it's a little different, so I cannot use the same plugins that I was using before. Hopefully soon. Still trying to figure it out, but with the high holidays, I didn't have time to go and explore this new version. But welcome everyone. Let's see who is here. Rocky Pollack said, Hineini. Oh, Hineini Reb. You have a new picture on your Facebook. No, it's a YouTube, Rocky. It's like some kind of indigenous art, maybe. Am I right? Let me know in the chat. Harvey Garfinkel is here. Telma Sures, Denise Fremlich is here. And Priscilla Kerr. But my numbers tell me that there is more people there. If you have access to the chat, please say hello. So I know that you are there with us. Either on Facebook or on YouTube. We are streaming live actually on 3 different platforms. Share Zedek YouTube, Share Zedek Facebook, and on my own personal Facebook. So yeah. Jack Pollack, Rocky, he said it's a Jackson Birdie bird. Okay. Wonderful. I can see a little bit of it. I think YouTube crops it when you put it as a profile picture. But it's a wonderful nevertheless. So we made it to a new cycle of the Torah. We're already on the week of Bereishit. We are reading the beginning of the Torah once again. What an amazing thing. We close the cycle and we are opening another one. And this is one of my favorite parshiot of the year, my favorite Torah portions. The Bereishit. Actually, I could probably spend the rest of the year just bringing you teachings and midrashim from the first verse, Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Thousands of midrashim of that one. But don't worry, I'm not going to do that. We are going to talk a little bit about it today and hopefully going into a more mystical than normal class, because that I think is it's a good place of the Torah to become a little bit mystical when we study the Genesis, right? Then we can come back to earth a little bit. But today, let's see if we can play with that a little bit. Holly Mandelkern is here. Welcome. And who else is here? Shelly Chochinov. What do you say, Shelly? It says, sorry to join it so late. What do you mean late? We haven't even started yet, Shelly. You're not late at all. Not late at all. Oh, there you go. So we are going to start soon with the material that I prepared for all of you so we can study today. I'm wearing my suit today because I came back from a Brit Milah, from a circumcision. Great thing. I love this celebrations. It's a wonderful time when we introduce a baby to the covenant between God and the people of Israel through the circumcision. And actually, the bris, Brit Milah, is coming from the book of Genesis. I mean, not from the first portion of the Torah, but it's coming from the book of Genesis. And we are going to see in a minute how the fact that the book of Genesis contains all the details about circumcisions makes it very important for the Jewish tradition. Because there is a discussion among the rabbis, why is the first book of the Torah necessary? I don't want to say too much about it. It's one of my slides and I will talk about it whenever we read it. Shelley, you said another beginning. Yeah, it's another beginning. I think that's going to be my sermon this Saturday. A new beginning. But it's like a special beginning. See, I have to come on Saturday to do that. Judy Sharak is here. Welcome, Judy. Welcome to the class. And we are going to begin right away. As I promised you before, we're going to study the beginning. Genesis 1:1. Now, the first problem we have with this verse is very difficult to translate. And I will show you in a minute why. Okay? But it's difficult to translate properly. And that creates also a little confusion on how to understand creation. The first verse of the Torah says, Bereishit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. Okay? Bereishit, in the beginning, bara Elohim, created God. Okay? Bara is created. Elohim is one of the names of God. Et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. Heavens and earth. I say this is a difficult thing because I remember the very first time that I was asked what was the first act of creation from God, and my answer was heaven and earth, and I was told, nope, the first act of creation was light. So, but again, and my answer was based on a bad translation, and I believe this translation that I presented you technically is not a great one, because if you say in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, so we say what is the first act of creation? Heaven and earth. But it should be understood almost like in the beginning of the creation of heaven and earth, which is not the same. It's not the same, because nothing was created at this point. There is no creation in the first verse of the Torah, and all the rabbis agree with that. This is just a description of what is going to come in the future. But there are many more things here. For example, the fact that the first letter of the Torah is the Bet, which is the number 2. And it seems to be something very weird, because if we are talking about God, that God is one, shouldn't the first letter be Aleph, which is the number 1? But no, it's the number 2. And from there, many rabbis agree that the reason why the Bet is the first letter of the Torah is a hint of what kind of creation we are talking about. The rabbis agree, specifically if you study Kabbalah, you're going to study the concept of duality. The fact that this world is a dual world. The realm of God is the realm of pure unity. All what is about God is the one, and the absolute one. There is nothing outside the one. But this world was created with duality, in the means that, and you will see, everything that is presented to us after the word Bereishit it will come in pairs. Bereishit bara Elohim shamayim va'aretz, heaven and earth, light and darkness, water and land, sun and moon. You see, everything comes in pairs. That is the signature of this world. We live in a world of duality. That's the word the Kabbalists call it. And I could spend hours talking about that. But just I want you to know that that's one of the interpretations of why the Torah opens with the letter Bet. Now, you cannot see it here on my text, but if you go to an actual Torah to scroll, you will see the letter Bet is a little bigger than the rest, making a statement there. The Torah opens with the number 2 and not with the number 1, because it's talking about this world, not so much about God's realm. Okay? Roberto Franco, welcome. Welcome to the class. Okay. So, let's go back to the creation of the world. And here is what I was mentioning before, that there is a debate among rabbis of why was the book of Genesis necessary? Why do we need to know about the creation of the world? There is nothing that we can do about it, or it could be presented in a different way. But and then we read about the Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, which are very interesting stories, but there is nothing there that is telling us what to do as Jews. There is no halakha. there is no Jewish law, or virtually no Jewish law, the first book of the Torah. So it was an interesting debate about the rationale for canonizing the first book, the book of Bereishit, and to put it at the same level, let's say, that Exodus, that has lots of law, or Leviticus, that has every law for the priests. So why is that? We're going to see that. Now, Shelly Chochinov, you say opposites. Yes. The Torah starts with opposites. And then, sorry, I'm going to be Kabbalistic for a little longer. Then we have the opposite combining or interacting with other opposites, right? And then you have what you would say the in-between things. Well, that it will be represented by the number 4, right? The number 2 is the duality in its purest form. We don't relate to that. There is no duality in a pure form in our world. Everything is in the number 4, which is the 2 with the combined with the 2. Okay, the 2 combined with the 2 is the number 4, and that is something that is, if you study Kabbalah, you will study about the number 4 as actually the actual number representing this, our world, the world that we know. Not the world that was created, the world as we know it. So let's see what Rashi say about the need or not of the book of Genesis, which is, by the way, what we are studying today. So Rashi said, it was not necessary to begin the Torah, except from this month is to you. So basically Rashi says, all the book of Genesis, all the slavery in Egypt and Moses and the burning bush and thing is nice, but it's not necessary. Okay? Rashi is talking about here specifically about halakha, Jewish law. So he says it was not necessary to begin the Torah except from this month is to you, which is that's the beginning of the first commandment after the Exodus, which is the first commandment that the Israelites were commanded. For the main purpose of the Torah, it is its commandments. And although several commandments are found in Genesis, for example, circumcision and the prohibition of eating the tithe sinew, they could have been included together with the other commandments. Right? They said, why do we need the book of Genesis? Just God should have a separate commandment, for example, during the book of Exodus or Leviticus, talking about circumcision, but now God decided to put in the book of Genesis. Why? So, Rashi continues. Now, for what reason did he is God, commence with in the beginning with Bereishit? Because of the verse, the strength of his works, he related to his people to give them the inheritance of the nations. This is from the book of Psalms. So, why is Rashi quoting this verse? For if the nations of the world should say to Israel, you are robbers, for you conquer by force the lands of the 7 nations of Canaan, they will reply, the entire earth belongs to the Holy One, blessed be He created it. This we learn from the story of creation, and gave it to whomever He deemed proper. When He wished, He gave it to them, and when He wished, He took it away from them and gave it to us. So, in other words, one of the reasons we read the book of Genesis is to make a point of the connection of the Jewish people with the land of Israel. But you will see the story of Abraham. But first, of course, all what had to happen until Abraham was a thing, right? All the corruption and everything until Abraham came to be. And the promises from God to Abraham, specifically about the land of Israel, and how Abraham settled there, he bought property, and so forth. And that's one of the reasons why the book of Genesis is so necessary, specifically for the Jews, because it's the book that is establishing the connection with the land. Yeah. Let's see. Denise, you have a question. Everything was a grain of sand or an idea? Grain of sand or an idea. I don't think I understand your question. If you can rephrase it, I will read it again in a minute. Okay? But I like this thing with Rashi explaining why the book of Genesis is so important for us, because other than there is no halakha. Of course, there is lots of morals that we can read or learn from the book of Genesis, right? We learn about family tension. We learn about cheating, lying. We learn about living in a foreign land. It's a very interesting book, but Rashi said from the practical point of view, hey, after all, that's what he was writing about, right? From a practical point of view, give me something with more substance. Rashi wanted to see the mitzvot, the commandments. And Genesis, you won't find much of that in there, of the mitzvot, the commandments. Okay? Now, there is more that we can learn about Genesis, and more specifically, how it connects to the Torah. For example, Midrash Rabbah will say, the Torah's, Denise, you think God had creation as a plan or something he did as a way? I'm just answering your question right now with this text. Midrash Rabbah, actually, Denise, had the same question, or made the same question that you just made. They asked the same question. Listen to this. The Torah says, I was the tool of God's artistry. An architect who builds a palace does not do so on his own. He has scrolls and notebooks which he consults regarding how to place the rooms, where to set the doors, and so forth. So it was with God. He looked into the Torah and created the world. So yeah, it's saying that not only God had a plan from the very beginning, the plan is the Torah. In other words, when you open the Torah is a book that perfectly fit this world. That's what the rabbis are trying to say here in the Midrash. And the Torah is, because the Torah was the plan, the entire world was created in a way that the Torah makes sense. Symbolically, it's saying that God created the world looking at the Torah. So, when we open the Torah, we should understand that the Torah makes perfect sense in this world, because that's why the world was created. So the Torah could make sense. And yeah. So when sometimes we read in the Torah about commandments that we don't understand, how this making any sense, I understand. Sometimes it's difficult. But Midrash Rabbah wants to make it clear that it makes sense in God's plan. Because if there is no place in this world for certain things of the Torah, then the Torah becomes irrelevant, and we believe that it's all the opposite, that the Torah is relevant in this world. I hope that answered your question, Denise. You see, it's the Zohar expands into that. And the Zohar will say, God looked into the Torah and created the world. Man looks into the Torah and sustains the world. What a wonderful thing. What a wonderful thing. It's how the Zohar is making this connection. And why Torah is so important for us. So important for us to make something good out of this world. And I guess that's why we keep studying it and again and again and again, and try to make sense of it, and to try to find ways of getting inspired by the Torah to do something good with this world. Sometimes it's not so easy, right? Yeah, duality again. And again, when we say, why do we have so many doubts on how to understand Torah and everything? Well, that is a byproduct of duality, by the way. A byproduct of duality is doubt, because now you have multiple options. When the only concept that exists is unity, there are no options, right? When God created the world with the concept of duality and multiplicity, I don't know if it's such a word, but when you have multiple alternatives and multiple things, then is when we have confusion, and doubt. Not everything is clear, but this is not a surprise to God. It was intended that way, and that's why sometimes it's difficult to find one unified voice of how to understand the Torah. Multiplicity of options, of alternatives, and so forth. Okay, and there are different ways to understand the Torah. I don't know if you ever realize that there are multiple ways to understand the Torah. Have you ever heard about the 4 ways of understanding Torah? That we have the Pshat, Remez, Drash, and Sod. Have you ever heard that concept of the 4 ways of understanding Torah? Actually, there are 4 ways, but it's supposed to be each one is higher than the one before. It's always almost like have you ever watched these movies with your kids and they have one reading of the movie, but you are an adult now, you understand something else, like a deeper meaning and so forth. So the Torah has the same thing, has different layers, and every layer is higher than the one before. So the whole idea is for us to get familiar with all the ways, all the layers of the Torah, because every layer that we can uncover and get inspired by, it will add something to our lives. So what is this coming from? This multiple levels or multiple ways of understanding Torah? Well, it's coming from the Talmud, okay? And then it was taken to the next level by the Zohar. So there is a midrash that it was presented in the Talmud and it was kind of brought back by the Zohar with minor changes, and it's a midrash explaining that there are 4 different ways to relate to the Torah. Let me present it to you. This is the famous midrash about the orchard. You may have heard this one before, about the 4 rabbis who entered the orchard. Okay? The Pardes. The Pardes. Why the Pardes? Everything has a reason here, and I will explain in a minute. But what it says here is that trying to understand the 4 levels of the Torah, it's not easy. And you can go crazy. You can go crazy trying to do that. And yeah. So this is the story of the Midrash of 4 rabbis who tried it. And out of the 4 rabbis, only one was successful at this. And that was Rabbi Akiva, by the way. That is the spoiler alert. Okay? So, it goes like this. The rabbis taught 4 enters the Pardes, literally the orchard. They were Ben Azai, Ben Zoma, Acher, and Rabbi Akiva. Before they entered, Rabbi Akiva said to them, when you come to the place of pure marble stones, do not say water, water. For it is said, he who speaks untruths shall not stand before my eyes. If it doesn't make any sense to you, that phrase that he said, don't feel bad. It's something that does not make any sense. Okay? Just take it like that. We are going to try to understand what he said, but not yet. Not yet. Okay, so that was the warning for Rabbi Akiva. Unfortunately, they didn't listen properly. What happened? Ben Azai gazed and died. Regarding to him, the verse states, precious in the eyes of God is the death of his pious ones. Ben Zoma gazed and was harmed. In other words, he went cuckoo. He lost his sanity. Regarding him, the verse states, did you find honey? Eat, but only as much as you need, lest you be overfilled and vomited up. That's a good warning for kids now that Halloween is coming up. Acher, Rabbi Elisha ben Abuya, cut down the plantings. He became a heretic. Rabbi Akiva was the only one who entered in peace and left in peace. And that shouldn't be surprising for us, because it looks like he was there before. That's why he was able to give this advice or this warning at the beginning to the other three rabbis, right? When you come to the place of pure marble stone and so forth, that gives you a clue that he mastered this way before the other three. Now, let's try to understand what happened here. And in order to do that, you have to understand a few things. You have to understand the symbolism behind this midrash. First thing is, what is the place of pure marble stones? That's number one. Number two is, what was about the other three rabbis that made them being unsuccessful to study Torah properly? What was it that one died, one went nuts, and the other one became a heretic, right? So let's get to it. First thing that we have to understand is why Rabbi Akiva was talking about this place of pure marble stones. There is an explanation that I found by Rabbi Moses ben Jacob Cordovero, and he said, the ancient Saba said to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, Rabbi, Rabbi, Holy Lamp, surely the pure marble stones are the letter Yud. One the upper Yud of the letter Aleph, and the other one the lower Yud of the letter Aleph. Here there is no spiritual impurity, only pure marble stones, and so there is no separation between one water and the other. They form a single unity from the aspect of the tree of life, which is the Vav in the midst of the letter Aleph. In this regard, it states, lest he put forth his hand, and if he takes of the tree of life and eat and live forever. Okay. So let's go by part. Here you have above me the letter Aleph. In case you don't speak Hebrew, that's okay. That's a representation of the letter Aleph. What you have to understand is that the Aleph is usually understood as having two Yuds, two-letter Yud in Hebrew. You see one on top, one at the bottom, and in the middle, the one that is like in an angle, that is like a letter Vav, just 45 degrees, but it's a letter Vav. Okay? So what is that Rabbi is saying here is that when you access that place of unity, of perfect unity, where you go somehow above the duality of this world, there are certain things that you have to start thinking differently. You have to forget about the duality represented by this life. There are many things that we understand for this world, but when you want to understand better the upper realms, when you want to understand better the essence of God, you should never try to understand God from the point of view of duality. That's for us here on earth. God is pure unity. So basically what it says is saying water. Some people think that it's a reference to the creation, where it said the waters of above and the waters of below. It's in the book of Genesis, at the beginning of creation. That is for us. In the realm of God, there is no water from above, water from below. There is no separation. There is no duality. All is unity. In this world, when we see the letter Aleph, is one Yud representing God, the other Yud representing us, and there is a kind of a Vav separating the two. Yes, they are connected, but separated. When God created this world, unfortunately, God had to create this separation, this veil in between. Why is that? Because God is an infinite being. We are finite. You cannot have the infinite and the finite at the same time, at the same place. It's impossible. Either it's finite or it's infinite. So there is these layers of separation between the two that makes somehow the coexistence of the infinite and the finite. It's as simple as that or as complex as that, depends. Because basically, if you think about God, there has no space, no time. right? No shape. How can something that has no time coexist with us that we are ruled by the laws of time and space? Will be impossible. So we have these layers of separation represented here by the letter you see there, the letter Vav in the middle of the two U's. Any questions? I know this is probably, I don't know. If you have any questions, any comments, please let me know in the chat. I would like to hear it from you. While we do that, let me continue trying to understand why the other rabbis failed. Because if we want to undertake serious Torah study, we have to see where they fail so we won't fail. If we want to study, for example, Kabbalah. And what is the problem with people sometimes trying to study Kabbalah? Okay? Which is, according to the rabbis, the highest level of the fourth. So, let's say Shimon ben Azai, the first rabbi, right? He was the one, let me see here. This is the one who died. Ben Azai. Okay? So, about him is said in the Talmud, with the passing of Ben Azai, diligent scholarship also ceased. Okay? Number one, what do we know about him? He was scholar. He spent a lot of time studying. Okay? Rashi will add, Ben Azai was diligently studying Torah day and night in the yeshiva. And listen what he said, Ben Azai, one of his statements. What can I do? My soul so greatly desires the Torah. Ben Azai made this statement in response to the question put to him, why had he never married, which is a violation of both normal human desire as well as halakha. And then he said, well, you know what? The world can be perpetuated by others. Rocky Pollack, this is awe-inspiring. It's not easy to find something intelligent to say. Okay? Okay, so Ben Azai, what happened with Ben Azai is that we know he's a scholar. He spent so much time studying Torah. And then one of the theories about this guy is that he got so absorbed by studies that he stopped eating and drinking. He got sick and he died because of his obsession with this topic. So it's telling about that if he really wants to engage in Torah study, one of the things that you need to do is to find balance in your life. It's not about studying 24/7, because if you don't stop to eat, to drink, and to sleep, and to exercise, then you cannot fully engage on Torah study. That's something that sometimes we forget. Even to apply Torah to our lives, we need to be healthy. Otherwise, we cannot fulfill mitzvot. How can you go to shul in the morning if you don't have strength, or if you're sick, right? So we have to be careful on our lifestyle if you want to do that. Now, who was the second one? The one who actually lost his mind. That was Ben Zoma. And this is very interesting. He said, Ben, the son of Zoma, said, who is wise? He who learns from all people. As it says, from all those who taught me, I gain understanding. Who is strong? He who conquers his evil inclination. It is said, better is one slow to anger than a strong man, and one who rules over his spirit than a conqueror of a city. Who is rich? He who is satisfied with his lot. As it is said, when you eat the toil of your hands, you are fortunate, and it is good for you. You are fortunate in this world, and it is good for you in the world to come. Who is honored? He who honors others. So it said, for those who honor me, I will honor, and those who scorn me will be degraded. This is from Pirkei Avot, right? If you ever took one of my Pirkei Avot classes, I usually teach this text from Ben Zoma, which is very interesting. And his approach to all this concept of who is wise, who is strong, who is rich, right? And who is honored. is almost like a modern approach. There is nothing mystical about the way he connects to Torah. Can you see that? How practical his wisdom is? So, based on that, based on what we know about Ben Zoma, we can understand a little bit more why he lost it when he tried to study Kabbalah. Okay? Listen to this. The next text. Ben Zoma gazed and went insane because he wasn't complete in his piousness and clarity as was Ben Azai. When he gazed at the brilliant light, the Pardes, it was more than his mind could handle, and he became psychotic, for he could not clearly understand that which he saw. In other words, there are theories that Ben Zoma actually tried to understand Kabbalah from a rational point of view. And they would say that sometimes you can apply rationality to certain studies. Like try to understand, logically. When you want to apply logic to understand who is wise, and that's fine. But when you are trying to apply logic, human logic, to trying to understand God and God's ways, it's more than you can take. Sometimes you have to use like a different part of your brain to connect with that. And Ben Zoma couldn't take it because he was not good at that, or didn't make that happen. He was always, instead of embracing it, he was fighting it because he wanted to see everything with a rational explanation. And some of the things, they don't have a rational explanation. Very interesting. Now, what happened with Elisha ben Abuya, also known as Acher? Okay? One of the first famous heretics in Jewish tradition. Regarding Elisha ben Abuya, Acher means the other. The other. Why? Because he was excommunicated from the Jewish people, and then so everybody will forget his name. He was nicknamed Acher. Nobody is allowed to talk about him, about Elisha ben Abuya anymore. From now on, everybody call it Acher. So we let him know that he's outside. Anyway, regarding Elisha ben Abuya, Acher, who was considered one of the greatest sages, yet he made a great mistake, great error. This being the relationship between the Yichud Elyon, the supernal unity, and the Yichud Hatachton, the lower unity. You see, back to the Aleph, the upper Yud, the lower Yud, think of it that way. He thought that they were two separate ways of divine providence. He thought that the entire Torah and all the mitzvot are given only to those who have not yet perceived the Yichud Elyon, but only the Yichud HaTachton. For he thought there is no king without a people who will serve him, God, and do as who will serve God, and serve as he wishes. However, the one who has been able to perceive the Yichud Elyon realizes that there is nothing in existence other than God, and that all is nullified before him. Therefore, there is no place for Torah and mitzvot, for there really is not any free will to merit reward of punishment. So in other words, what happened here is Elisha ben Abuya became an expert on mysticism, let's put it this way. And then he will say that once you master mysticism, you are at the next level, you don't need Torah anymore. And then when you're at that place, you look down, you're in the upper Yud, you look at the lower Yud and say, you are worthless. That is something for people who hasn't reached this level. Once you reach this level, stop fulfilling mitzvot. You don't need them anymore. That is for the masses, not for the scholars. So, specifically Rabbi Akiva said, no. We are living in this world and we need both. We need to connect to the upper Yud and to try to understand it as much as we can, the best we can, but we also need the lower Yud to make this world a better world, which Elisha ben Abuya didn't care about this world. He neglected this world. He do whatever you want in this world. It's what you do or don't do is irrelevant. And that's not the Jewish way. That's why we didn't say that he lost it or he died. He became something that it was not Jewish. His philosophy was not a Jewish philosophy. So he didn't represent Judaism, and he was excommunicated. So let me see what the Vilna Gaon said about him. There is a pshat and there is a sod. Pshat is the literal meaning of the verse, by the way. Sod is the esoteric or mystical explanation of the verse. There is halacha and there is Kabbalah. Yet there is a sod to halacha, and there is a pshat, and there is a pshat, and there is a pshat to Kabbalah, as there is sod. So you see, they are both necessary. All things, be it halacha or Kabbalah, must be learned and applied at a sod level. For one without the other means the nullification of both. Nowhere do we see this more than in the case of Elisha Acher. Okay, basically said both Kabbalah, mysticism, and halacha, practice in Judaism, are both necessary, and that's the Jewish way. Okay, so the other thing I want to explain is why they call it the Pardes, or the orchard. Well, because it's an acronym for the 4 levels of studying Torah. Pardes. Actually, I should put this in a different order. There. Now it's Pardes. Now it's Pardes. Sorry, I have to ignore. Very good. Pardes. The 4 levels of understanding the Torah. You see the initials here. P-R-D-S. Pardes. We usually call it Pardes, which means orchard. Okay, so it's not that they enter to actually orchard. When the Talmud says they enter to the Pardes, that means that they engage into studying the Torah from all the 4 levels. Okay, so the 4 levels of understanding the Torah are Pshat, the straightforward explanation or literal meaning of the text. You can do that right now. Open the Bible, start reading whatever you understand from there. That's the Pardes. That's the Pshat. But then we have the Remez. Okay, the word Remez literally means a hint or allusion. In essence, Remez is a lower level of the profound understanding of the Torah represented by Sod. So it's like a when you study a text and you said, oh, it's an allegory. That's Remez. Then we have the Drash, deeper explanation of the text based on established exegetical principles known from tradition. Okay, that's when the rabbis explain the verse, connecting verses and connecting words, and then you have a deeper level of that. And then you have the Sod, the Kabbalistic, secret, or mystical explanations of the text. And I would like to take the next few minutes to give you examples of these 4 levels so you can understand what I'm talking about here. Okay, no more theory. Let's go into practice. Let me give you an example of the Pshat. Don't worry, nobody will go nuts here or die from this. Just keep your mind open and you're safe. You're safe. Pshat. Genesis 1:1. Okay? The first verse that we started at the beginning. Rashi said, if you come to interpret it according to its Pshat, interpret it thus, in the beginning of creation of heaven and earth. So according to Rashi's linguistic analysis, the word Bereishit does not actually mean in the beginning, but rather in the beginning of. It's what I told you at the beginning, right? That basically heaven and earth were not the first act of creation, but the whole verse is a description of what's coming. How do we know that? Because of the grammar of the Hebrew. There is not much other than to understand. You know, you if you read it properly, you will get this. That's typical example of Pshat, of how to understand properly a verse based on the way it's written, for example. And Rashi did an amazing job about that to virtually every verse of the Torah. That is one. Now, the Remez, when you study about an allegory. Okay? So, for example, in this case, the Vilna Gaon said, all 613 commandments are hinted to in the word Bereishit. So you see, what I did here is I'm trying to present to you Pshat, Remes, Drash, and Sod from the same verse. So you can understand how the same verse could be learned in 4 different ways, okay? So, same verse, now the Vilna Gaon, without contradicting Rashi, by no means, he's going to a deeper level. And he said, all 613 commandments are hinted to in the word Bereishit. For example, the commandment of Pidyon Haben. Pidyon Haben is when you have the firstborn, you have to redeem it through a priest. And there is a ceremony to do that. So, the commandment of Pidyon Haben is hinted via the phrase Ben Rishon Acharei Shloshim Yor Tifdeh. A first son after 30 days should be redeemed. And the acronym of the first letter of the phrase is Bereishit. Even though it's okay, he gives here only one example on how this mitzvah is hinted in the word Bereishit. And he will do that for, it's an interesting exercise that he did, for every commandment that it could be found in the word Bereishit playing around. And that was a typical example of Remes. Sometimes we, even in some examples of numerology, could fall into this category. Some of them are more Sod, but it's also coming into the Remes category. Now let's move to the Drash. Drash, Midrash, same thing. Same verse. Now Rashi brings another explanation, this time verse on Drash, based on Drash, and he said, the Hebrew word Bereishit in the beginning can be homiletically understood to mean due to the first, where first, Reishit, is a word used elsewhere to refer in the Torah and to the Jewish people. Thus, one may say that the world was created for the sake of Torah and the sake of the Jewish people. Bereishit. Reishit. So basically what Rashi is doing here is splitting the word Bereishit into 2 words. Reishit. And then he noticed that the word Reishit, which means first, was also used to refer to the Torah and to refer to the Jewish people. So if you said Bereishit, bara Elohim et hashamayim v'et haaretz, with Reishit in mind, God created heaven and earth. Then, said Rashi, using the Midrash, the whole world was created for the sake of Torah and the Jewish people. That's a Midrashic interpretation of the first verse of the Torah. Okay? And there is one more. This is the Kabbalistic understanding of the first verse of the Torah. And of course, I took this from the Zohar. And the Zohar said, again, talking about the first verse of the Torah. Listen to this. This is fantastic. If you don't understand the thing that I'm reading, congratulations, because you don't supposed to. But this is typical Zohar language. Goes like this. With the beginning of the manifestation of the king's will, that is, when the king desired to create the world, a hard spark made an engraving upon the supernal light. This hard spark, which emanated from the most concealed of all concealed things, from the secrets of Ein Sof, endlessness, and took a shapeless form. The spark was then inserted into the center of a circle that was neither white nor black nor red nor green, not any color at all. When he began its measurements, he created bright colors that shone into the empty space and the engraving. From within the spark, this hard spark, a fountain spouted, from which the shades down below received their colors. Very easy to understand, right? Sure it is. But my point is, when you engage, you see why I say that this rabbi, who was it? The second one, when Ben Zoma tried to understand things like this, using rational thinking, it's virtually impossible. You are going to go insane. When you engage into Kabbalistic studies, sometimes it's better. It just close your eyes, use your imagination, connect to your feelings, because the author of the Zohar, what he was doing is trying to use language to describe something that is impossible to describe with language. If we are saying that God is infinite, that means that you cannot use language, which is a finite tool, to describe God. And yet, the Zohar is trying to do that, which is pretty impossible. So what happened is the author of the Zohar, he had this profound understanding of the divine, but he had it in his gut, his kishkes. You know, when, I don't know if it ever happens to you, that you have this profound understanding and illumination about something, but you don't know how to explain it in a way to make another person feel the way you feel. Yes, you can make another person think the way you think, but not feel the way you feel. So the Zohar is trying to somehow make the reader feel what the author felt, which is very difficult if you just open the book and do it. That's why the Zohar used to be taught one-on-one. So your teacher may have to try different ways to be sure that you are getting it, that you are feeling it. Because sometimes our connection with God and our connection with the ways of God is more a feeling than a thought. And that's why it's all these descriptions of colors. So what you have to do is to close your eyes and to imagine colors, right? Which is, Denise, you said he was trying to purvey emotions. I believe so. I mean, I can't be certain, but to me, this is what it looks like. And you see here when is for example, the Zohar is mentioning the Ein Sof, the endlessness. It's talking about the tree of life here, and I will present this to you just quickly. This is you may have seen this before. Basically, the Ein Sof of Keter or crown is the top sphere, the top circle, and it's something that is impossible to reach in this world. But we can connect, and there are ways to understand God by, quote unquote, navigating the tree of life. So let me explain quickly about this. The main teaching diagram in Kabbalah is called the tree of life. It consists of 10 qualities. You see, it called Sefirot, emanations. These qualities originate from the divine being and are echoed in human nature because we are created in the image of God. The Sefirot are considered revelations of the Creator's will, and they should not be understood as 10 different gods, but as 10 different ways the one God reveals his will through the emanations. The 10 Sefirot are a step-by-step process illuminating the divine plan as it unfolds itself in creation. Okay? So, yeah, it's people dedicate their entire lives sometimes to try to understand the tree of life. 12:59. I have one more text for you, and I want to leave you another Kabbalistic text about creation from Rabbi Chaim Vital. He was a Kabbalist, and he said, before creation, the exalted light was simple. Before creation, the exalted light was simple. It filled all existence so that there was no empty space. Everything was filled with infinite light. Remember what I talked about at the beginning about the unity? There was no number 2, nothing by the pure one, okay? Nothing outside the infinite light. Infinite, nothing finite, everything infinite. The concept of beginning and end did not exist. The word Bereishit didn't exist because there was no beginning. To have a beginning, you need an end. Everything was simple light, infinite light. When it was God's will to create all the worlds, he constricted himself at the central point of his light, and exactly at the middle he withdrew his light and pulled it back to the sides around the central point. Thus, an empty space encircling that central point came into being. Almost like It's almost like the description of the Big Bang here. I don't know. It's and this was written centuries before the Big Bang was a thing. But that's, you see, the word is used there. Constricted himself, God constricting himself, and then boom, going like that. It's very interesting. That's why I wanted to show it to you, that Kabbalah, sometimes some Big Bang theorists are somehow connected in the language they use. Yeah. And again, yeah, Denise, you say, you said, the concept of light. But again, we use the word light because we don't have a better word to use. Of course, what kind of light could be, you said before creation, the light was simple. What light if you don't have any like planets or stars or anything? So you cannot have the kind of light that we call light. But anyway, we call it light because we have nothing else. Maimonides wrote a lot about that, about how limited we are because we have to use language. And sometimes as soon as we use language, we get biased by our own words, and it's limiting us into understanding new things because we have to use language to describe it. So anyway, okay, time's up. Thank you so much, everyone. I know this probably was a little bit more intense than regular classes, but I wanted to share with you some different approach of the book of Genesis. I hope you enjoyed it. If you missed any part of the class, this class will be repeated, will be restreamed tonight at 8 p.m. Central Time. And yeah, Denise, you want to take it metaphorically, but yeah, because we don't have any other way of doing it, unfortunately. Yeah, next week, next Thursday, 12 noon, right here, we're going to study about Noah and the flood. Okay, thank you everyone for tuning in. Have a wonderful day. Stay safe. Hope to see you soon. Bye, everyone.